Hello guys, today we'll be talking about measure words in Chinese. As we all know, measure word is very important in Chinese, but we have so many different measure words. How do we actually use them? Okay, let's get started. So the first one, you can see actually I wrote in red. That means this character will be our general or universal measure word. It's pronounced as ge. Ge. So in this table, you can see I already wrote down this measure word you can use for anything. That's why we called it a universal measure word. But people will ask, oh, can I use ge for anything? The answer is yes, but the problem is in our language, we all have different other measure words we need to use because it depends on the characteristics of the item, and also it will be more accurate if you use measure words properly. So you sound like a more natural Chinese speaker. So we'll be going over all of them today. So the first one, ge, that's the most important and a simple one to remember. So the one below ge is called kou. Kou. So this character in Chinese means our mouth, our mouth. So simply you can think of the second meaning here. It represents mouthful, mouthful. So every time you say something with a mouthful, we use kou. For example, we say 一口水. So 水 means water. So we use kou to measure 水. So which means I have water in my mouth and my mouth is full of water. So that's the second way of using kou. The first way, we can also use kou to describe family members. For example, I say 我家有三口人. So 我家 means my family. 三 numbers 3. So I said 我家有三口人. There are 3 people in my family. So we use kou to describe family members. So there are 2 ways we want to use kou to measure the item based on their features instead of ge, because that's more accurate. Now, let's move on to zhi, the third one on the left. Zhi, zhi. There are 2 ways of using zhi. You can see up here. The first one is called one of the pair, one of the pair. The example I'm using is 一只鞋. We can see 一 here as number 1. 鞋 means shoes. Okay, so I want to say 一只鞋, which means it's one of the shoes, which is in a pair of shoes. You're talking about one of them. Okay, the second way we can use 只 is actually describing animals. Animals. I say 一只狗.狗means dog. So what I just said is I use 只 to measure one dog. I could also say 三只猫, 3 cats. Now, next one, 皮. So this one is not so common, but we have to remember the first way of using 皮, because for this particular animal, horse, we have to use 皮 instead of 只. So for this exception, we have to remember it, because 皮 is only used to describe animal horse. The second way of using it is also very not common. You can use 皮 to describe the bolts of clothes. So some people say, what's the meaning of bolts of clothes? It's actually a measurement in our China standard. So when you go to a shop, you want to buy clothes for your curtain, right? You want to say, I want 3匹布. 3匹布. So I'm saying I need 3 bolts of clothes for my curtain. That's how we use 匹. Okay, last one on the left. We have 把. 把. So make sure the tone is going down and going up. Third tone, 把. So for 把, we normally describe things with handle. Okay, example here. 一把椅子. So 椅子 means chairs. Okay, do you remember chairs? We have handles on the sides. So that's why we use ba to describe a chair, okay? Now let's move on to the right. We still have 5 more measure words to go over. The first one is called ben. Ben is also the 3rd tone. For ben, we only use ben to describe books. 一本书 means 1 book. Okay, people will say now, what about I say 一个书? While it also makes sense, we could understand, but the problem is, if you use ben, you sound like a native speaker because this measure word is more accurate to describe books. Okay, the one below ben is called 张, which is flat tone, 张. So 张 is used to describe paper. So what if I say 3张纸? So 纸 in Chinese is paper. If I say 3张纸, 3 is number 3. So what I'm trying to say is 3 pieces of paper. I use 张 to measure paper instead of 个 because this sounds more natural. Okay, after 张, we have another zhi. If you see a star sign here, we have 2 zhi. The pronunciations for both zhis are the same, but they have different ways to use them. Okay, for this zhi, did you remember the character here? It looks different than this one. You can see there is a cross on top. So this zhi, we normally use it to describe skinny things. For example, I drew something like this. I'll draw something like this. Okay, so bi in Chinese means a pen or a pencil, okay? So we have to use zhi to describe the number of bi. Why? Because look at here, it's skinny things, okay? So every time you see an item, the shape is very skinny, we use zhi to describe this item. Okay, the second last, we have bei, bei. So make sure the tone is flat, bei. So for bei, we normally use bei to describe liquid. But this one is not very easy to identify. What you can put here is example, cup and glass. So I would say 一杯水 yi number 1, 杯 to describe liquid, 水 is water. So what I just said is a glass of water. So liquid in the glass. So I use 杯 to describe liquid. Last one is called 快. 快 is falling tone. So every time we use 快 is to describe small blocks. What if I say 一块橡皮? 一块橡皮. 橡皮 in Chinese is eraser or rubber. So it's a small block. That's why we use 块 to describe eraser. Okay, now let's do a quick recap. We've just went over all the measure words in Chinese, and we all know 个 is a universal measure word. We can use it to describe everything. But the rest of the measure word, we have to use them accordingly. Okay? The reason behind it is actually we have to, based on the characteristics of any item, to decide which measure word is the best fit.